Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today is March 24th, 2026. Welcome to EDU Endpoint Office Hours. Today, you're stuck with me, Richard Balsley. We don't have Garrett today. Garrett's out on assignment. He's traveling our great country, talking to customers and getting a lay of the land of what's going on out there with endpoint management. So you guys are all stuck with me. But we've got a ton to talk about. Garrett ditched me on the same week that the RSA conference is going on. So whenever there's a major conference going on, there's generally a lot of news that comes out of that. So we've got a lot of it. So let's kind of kick off here with the end of the technical takeoff. So March is closing here in about a week. And the Windows and Intune technical takeoff, all the topics have been released. So all the videos are out there. So if you go to aka.ms/technical takeoff, that will take you to the tech community website that has all the posts and all the different sessions. So you can click the links there and take a look at all the sessions that we released over the last month. And in one of the things that I watched out of the technical takeoff that I think most people are probably interested in, and we've talked about this, I think, now for about a year or so, but the Intune timing, how, when you click on sync, what happens? Like, if I click the sync button, what exactly is syncing? Am I getting policy? Am I getting apps? Am I getting Win32 apps? Am I getting store apps? There's, all sorts of questions about how that process works. And there was a session on that not last Monday, but the Monday prior to that. And I put a link directly to it in the link dump that's in the chat for Intune Timing Demystified. Highly recommend checking that out to understand not just how syncing works, because there's a lot more in that post or in that video besides just syncing, but also around what changes are happening and are going to be put into Intune coming here soon, and stuff that's already actually rolled out based on the last technical takeoff session that we had presented on. We've made some improvements there, but there's going to be more improvements that are coming here soon. So take a look at the video. It's about 17 minutes, so it's not too terribly long. Watch it at 1.5 speed, get it done, close to 10 minutes. But let's start going through all these links because there's a ton of content that we had put out. And you guys were talking about some of this in the chat around multi-admin approval. And so to kick this off, the first post that we had come out with about 10 days ago was around best practices for securing Microsoft Intune. And there's really three main things that we call out in this post. The first two, I think we should all pretty much level set that these are important things to do. And this is, I'm not going to say this is the only reason why the Stryker thing happened, but if you're not familiar with Stryker and what happened in the last 2-3 weeks, there was a nation state attack on a medical devices company called Stryker. And this was a targeted attack directly to them. This isn't a pervasive, malware type style attack that was, had a huge blast radius and hit a bunch of companies. This was one particular company that got hit. And effectively what happened is that they ended up with all their devices that were managed by Microsoft Intune. They all got wiped. I think it was like 20,000 some odd devices that got hit. And so when this happened, you would expect that Microsoft would have some sort of response about how to handle a situation like this. Now, this blog post came out of that, but this blog post doesn't directly talk about that incident. But these are all things that people should be doing in their environments today. But Intune wasn't the reason that Stryker got hit. The organization that took credit for the attack, they're likely to have been in that environment for many months. Could be even 18 months. Like they were most likely in that environment for a really long time. That's kind of what they tend to do. They'll sit, they'll watch, they'll analyze the environment, and then attack or do whatever they need to do after the fact. And so this wasn't okay, Intune got breached, and Intune was part of a much broader attack vector that they were going after. But the reality is that they used Intune to wipe quite a few devices. So the first thing that we talk about in the post is use least privilege. This is fairly obvious, and it's not just Intune, but just the broader Microsoft 365 productivity stack. You want to make sure that we're using least privileges. We don't want to have everyone have global admin, which I know a lot of you guys probably have global admin. You might not be using privileged identity management. Might not even be using role-based access. And I know we've got some challenges on the Intune side of things and Entra with role-based access, but this is not the time to sit and talk about those things. But number one, least privilege, reevaluate who's got rights to doing what, and make sure that we've got the correct roles and responsibilities that are being assigned to the people that need them. The second phase of this is phishing resistant authentication. Make sure that we're taking advantage of things like conditional access, privileged identity management, phishing resistant passwordless authentication. We're using FIDO, use FIDO keys, use PAWS if you need to, privileged access workstations. There's a lot of things that we can be doing here that can also prevent the situation like what happened with Stryker. And then the third thing here is multi-admin approval. And I've got my own thoughts on multi-admin approval and the benefits of it. It's grown a lot since we initially released it. Early on, it was really just for scripts, and then we added apps, and now there's a lot more that you can do with it. Now you can do wipes. You can control wipes behind it. But what this requires, though, is it requires two people. One person is going to make the request to do something, so that could be a wipe, and then it requires a second person to approve that. Well, in the Stryker situation, this Intune, if you had multi-admin approval set up for wipe, these guys aren't going into the console and wiping 100 devices at a time. They hit 20,000 devices. They didn't go 100 devices at a time to get to 20K. They most likely scripted this. They most likely hit the graph to do it. We do say that multi-admin approval does leverage, actions performed through Intune APIs. My assumption here is the graph. I haven't personally tested to see if I put multi-admin approval on and then I try to do a wipe through the graph, if multi-admin approval would catch that. My assumption based on what we've written here says that yes, that's the case, but without testing it, I'm not 100% certain that's the case. Some of you guys may have tested it. If you have, you post in the chat that it works, but I personally don't know. I haven't tried it. But if I'm in an environment like this, Intune's not the only place that I can affect every single endpoint. I can if I've got admin rights in the environment, I can most likely hit all of those devices with a script that didn't have anything to do with Intune. I can deploy that. If I'm on your network, I could probably hit most of your devices. Or if I ran a Win32 app, I could deploy a Win32 app that just runs a PowerShell script, and that could hit all the devices as well. So if we're looking at multi-admin approval and saying that we want to turn this on for everything, well, it's kind of like security. Like I can secure a device that has no outbound access to anything, and it's probably the most secure device that's out there because it's not able to touch the internet. But at the same time, if I've got multi-admin approval and I'm turning that on for everything, I'm not going to be able to do a lot of things right away. It's going to take much longer to wait for an admin to approve it. Not to mention that multi-admin approval doesn't have alerting. So if people aren't getting alerts through email or phone or something else, then they're not going to know that they have to approve something unless they go and actually check the portal. So when you make a action within Intune that is behind multi-admin approval, you are going to then need to go and talk to someone that can approve that request, and email them, send them an IM or something. Say, hey, can you go and approve my request that I just put in? And that obviously takes time. And what if the person that is going to approve it isn't even there, or they're on vacation or something else? Or if you're the only admin, then you can't use multi-admin approval at all. So while this can help, and I'm not saying that multi-admin approval is wrong, like there's a lot of cases where multi-admin approval will definitely be useful. But these first two things are much more important to preventing what happened with Stryker. And there's also some on-prem things as well that you need to do to prevent them from actually getting in to begin with. But this is a much more broader problem than just Intune wiping devices. Like Intune was a tool that was used, but getting in was the first problem. Mark, you have your hand up. I don't know if this has anything to do with what I just talked about.
It does, because CISA came out with a whole bunch of information similar to this, and kind of wrote on the shirt tails of what Microsoft is saying. And our environment, we're trying to embrace it. The problem is when you're in a distributed area, you're trying to get the other people to like say, yeah, maybe we need to look at this, and it's not a knee jerk. It's something that needs to be done, and it's a good review. So yeah,
it's tough. We've put a lot of effort into making multi-admin approval better, and there's still a long way to go, I think, to make it.
We're learning it. Yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah, like there, and again, like I said, like there's some good things. Like it's getting better, but it's not the panacea. It's not something that's going to solve the problem that what happened with Stryker. But if it works for your environment, and again, we're saying to actually go and use it, but at the same time, there are limitations to it, and so just be aware of those things.
Yeah, there's like 5 things that can be done, but that MAA is only 1/5 of a small piece of that.
Yeah, I see another hand that went up. I don't know whose hand that is, but where's that? Oh, Omar.
It's Omar.
Yeah,
Hey,
Omar.
Richard. So about multi-admin approval, we've been trying to turn this on, testing it and stuff. What I've noticed about it is, of course, we set up the approvers in the RBAC controls in Intune. But when we create a policy and we in that access policy, we scope it to a specific approver group, any approver can approve any of the multi-admin approval policies. So it kind of like, I get turning it on and having someone approve it, but not being able to scope the access policy is a problem for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's again one of those limitations that I was mentioning earlier, that we just don't have. It's not set up to be scoped, and there's other parts of Intune, as we're all kind of well aware, that we can't scope like we would like to, and so this is just kind of one of those other areas. But to be fair, like a year ago, multi-admin approval I think was only for scripts and apps. So having the other components added to that, I think has been it's been good, but again, there's still more that we need to add to it to make it, I think, more full features.
It was preview for a while, and I think they added some more when they went GA.
Yeah. Well,
but I asked. I said, when is notification going to occur, and when's graph going to occur? And the answer I got was, don't count on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, when you have an incident like this, I think an incident like this can shine a light onto features that we have in the product that are kind of half-baked a bit. That it's like, oh, hey, we know we have multi-admin approval there. We know that we have some gaps here. We know that we just had a major incident that got a lot of press, and that our product was used to hit a lot of devices and cause some pretty significant impact. And so this could be one of those inflection points where it's like, hey, let's put some more behind this to make those gaps, to help close those gaps. So we'll see what happens. But I wanted to call it out because we're calling it out here, to how to make things more secure. And a lot of people aren't doing these things. So it's just one of those things that we want to make sure that people are looking at. I do have to jump to Heather's top. I've got a crap ton of stuff to talk about, so I don't want to spend the whole time talking about MAA. Sorry about that, James. I know you wanted to jump in there.
No problem. I can put it in chat.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we also announced that we've got 3 new partners for multi-tenant management coming to Intune. I won't spend a whole lot of time here, but if you're if you're looking for an MSP, or if you're working with MSPs, we have added now, who we had? We had AvePoint, CIPP, in Software Central Tenant Manager. There's a video that one of our MVPs recorded about the multi-tenant management capabilities that our MSPs have now. I think he looks through Nerdio and I think the other three, it's mentioned in here somewhere. But if you're interested in working with an MSP to help you manage Intune, we've got some more partners that are going down that path. Okay, so for RSAC, a few different announcements and a few different blog posts, one from Intune, one from Edge, one from Entra, to kind of talk about how we're securing the stack with all three different products. And with Intune, we've got some new functionality coming to existing features that we wanted to announce the timing of those things. I think a lot of this stuff was announced at Ignite, but there wasn't really any dates and times associated with those announcements. And now we're putting some dates and times around those things for later this year, actually relatively soon. One of those things is Intune Enhanced App Inventory. So right now today, if you go into Intune, you go to devices, you go under monitor, you can get some app inventory. It looks at your Win32 apps through WMI. It looks at the store apps that have been installed. But there's not a whole lot of depth to the data that you get out of that. And so what we're doing is we're enhancing the app inventory all across the applications that have been pulled into Intune. So you should be able to get more visibility into the app estate across devices. That should be landing, let's see, starting in May. So got a couple months here before we see that. There's a screenshot here of what that experience should look like. You'll get the install date, architecture, uninstall command, you get the app name. And so there's more. I don't know if this is going to be the final view of it, but it's kind of the screenshot's kind of terrible, actually. It's very blurry. But you'll have some more columns, and there's more columns than what's already listed on this page. If you look at the columns drop down that's right here, shows that you've got package name, modify command, last updated. So and the user enter ID as well as the SID from the user. So lots more info that's being collected and displayed than what we currently have today under the monitor tab within Intune. So that'll be coming in May. We've got some enhancements that are being made to enterprise app management. One of those is EAM auto updates. So the EAM auto updates, you'll now have the ability to select for a enterprise app catalog app, whether you want the app to automatically update, and if you want that to update, or if you want it to update with supersedence. So that's going to be coming starting in July. And then we make some mention here on some of the Security Copilot agents, well, one of the agents, rather, the vulnerability remediation agent. I don't think there's anything new here. It's currently in public preview, but how we tie into that was that by automatically updating your EAM apps, that should reduce overall vulnerability in the environment by just keeping your apps up to date. So we kind of tie into the vulnerability remediation agent through making your apps more secure and more up to date. Script installer support for EAM and Win32, that's already there today. So if you've always wanted to use a PowerShell script to install an app, like a Win32 app or an EAM app, we talked about this, when both of these things were released within the last 6 to 9 months. So if you're not familiar with that, you now can use scripts to both install and uninstall apps. And so you've got that choice. And then replacing standing admin rights with just-in-time elevation. So with EPM, we're going to be expanding some of our EPM capabilities in June, or maybe before June. And those would tie into support approvals for non-primary users. Right now today, and I think in education, this impacts us a bit because a lot of you guys probably have devices that don't have a primary user. So if you're using self-deploying autopilot profiles, you don't get a primary user associated with those devices. You also don't get a primary user associated if you're using a provisioning package to do the enrollment. And in both of those cases, if you were to use EPM, you wouldn't be able to use support approval for EPM. So for those of you that are using EPM today and you've run into this issue, I know there's a few of you out there that have run into this issue. It was probably a problem for you like probably about a year ago. This is now starting to roll out starting in April. And then we are going to have scope tag support being added to EPM reporting data, which will show the elevation activity. And that will obviously be segmented based on your scope tags. And so that should be rolling out in June. And we also are just bringing up the capability of being able to use App Control for Business and Manage Installer. Manage Installer is interesting. I spent a lot of time looking at that. And actually, I was kind of one of the ones that was pushing for us to put this into Intune, primarily around K-12 use cases where we wanted to prevent students from installing applications on devices. And the thought process with Manage Installer was that if we can just have Intune be the Manage Installer, meaning that I can deploy any app I want from Intune, yet students or other people on the device can't install anything. I'm basically then relying on Intune to be the thing that installs whatever it is that needs to be installed on the device. The challenge with Manage Installer, though, is that a lot of applications are kind of like those nested Russian dolls where like you've got an app and then inside of the app, there's another app, and then inside of that app's another app. And then inside of that's like a scheduled task that updates one of the prior apps. And so you have this nested application installation routine that Manage Installer may not actually know about. And so then you have to start modifying your rules to allow those apps to actually run. And so it becomes very challenging to use Manage Installer. It's been a little while since I've looked at that since, but this was probably about 2 years ago. I don't know if we're making any more improvements to how Manage Installer works, but that was one of the challenges that I had with it, is that in a lot of cases, especially on the EDU side, we have a lot of weird apps that are wrapped in other installers that make it really difficult for us to use Manage Installer. Even though Manage Installer is supposed to leverage the sign, like you can have it leverage the signing of a child app or a child installer, but it just becomes really strange. So if you ever go down that path, just know that you may run into some potential issues doing it, depending on how your apps operate. Let's see, protecting corporate data at the app level, app protection policies. The main thing here is our new support for Edge for Business work profiles on Windows PCs managed by another organization. This extends app protection to browser-based work without creating tenant management conflicts. What all this means, and we made this announcement quite a while ago. There's a link to this blog post here. But what this means is that with Edge for Business, when you use app protection policies, we can target these to unmanaged machines. And I know in a lot of cases, you guys have probably, some of you may have been approached by Island or Island browser. What we're seeing a lot of right now is in this unmanaged work stream, where we have these devices that you might have a contractor, you might have just users that need to access data from on-prem, but they don't want their devices to be managed, and you don't want to manage their device. But you simply just want to make sure that the browser that they're connecting from is secure and it's connecting in to your organization, but it's meeting the policies that you have deployed out to them. Well, with app protection policies, we can control some of that. But for the longest time on Windows, you couldn't really do that with Edge. That changed probably, I don't know, it was probably about 3 to 6 months ago. And so what we're calling out here is that we made this announcement a while back, but we're just reminding people that you can do this. So if you're being approached by other vendors saying, hey, like we can secure your unmanaged devices, look at Edge and look at the improvements that we made to Entra, especially the blocking of enrolling personal devices. Like we talked about that for a while, about 2-3 weeks ago, about the changes to unmanaged machines, trying to access corporate resources and then getting enrolled into Intune. Now that we can prevent that, that ties into this Edge for Business stuff that we're talking about. So between those two things, you can now get that unmanaged machine to get access to resources, but using app protection policies to protect the Microsoft Edge browser. So take a look at that if that's a use case that you might be interested in. And then just some more links about the RSA conference, which still goes until the 26th. Okay, now this is the big one that came out on Friday, and I'm kind of surprised that I didn't see any of you guys talking about this in the chat. But it's probably because it came out on Friday. So not expecting everyone to work over the weekend, but there was a pretty lengthy blog post, and Twitter, a lot of our product team posted on Twitter, on X, about some of the improvements that we're looking to make with Windows, especially around product quality. Taskbar customizations, a lot of people complained, like this is the #1 bullet point on this list. Taskbar customization, including vertical and top positions. A ton of people complained when Windows 11 came out that we did not have the ability to move the taskbar. And a lot of that was due to, we basically rewrote the taskbar. So being able to move it around wasn't going to be in the V1 release of that. We had to just get the taskbar working. We had to, it obviously is resizes itself like an accordion, depending on how many icons you have on it. But you also couldn't put the taskbar icons all the way to the left like you could with Windows 10. So there's just a lot of complaints around the taskbar. And so one of the top items was, okay, let's go ahead and fix that. And let's make sure that we can bring back the customization capabilities that we had back with other releases of Windows. Integrating AI where it's most meaningful with craft and focus. So a lot of this, we've got Copilot everywhere. Let's maybe pull back a lot of the Copilot inflection points that we see, and bringing them out of things, starting with apps like Snipping Tool, Photos, Widgets, and Notepad. I might argue that Photos, Copilot could be helpful there. Definitely not with Notepad. But Photos, depending on how many photos you have, I'm sure there's some AI that could actually help with just organization of photos. But I definitely don't need it in Snipping Tool. I don't need it in Widgets. I don't need it in Notepad. So this is I think this is a good focus for us here. And I think a lot of people were happy about that I saw on the internet. Reducing disruption for Windows updates. Receiving updates should be predictable and easy to plan around, giving you more control. As we've kind of gotten away from Config Manager, I know a lot of you guys still are kind of using it, but as we've moved over to Windows Update for Business, we kind of lost a bit of control. And so this is one of those avenues for us to make this, to give users more control back over when updates install, or if they just want to skip updates. So in this case, we mentioned that this includes the ability to skip updates during device setup to get to the desktop faster, restart or shut down, which is kind of interesting because we just released the ability for updates to install during the out-of-box experience. And a lot of people asked for that. You couldn't do it for the longest time. And then we released it, and then people are like, well, wait, I don't want that. Well, what they really want is just a choice. Some people want to do it, and then others don't. And so this just gives you that choice, but not just as an IT admin, but also as a consumer. And so we'll be doing that. Faster restart or shut down without installing updates, and pause updates for a longer period, all while reducing all the noise and fewer automatic restarts and notifications. So I think this will be a better experience. And we talked last week about turning on hotpatch automatically. So hotpatch is going to be coming automatically. If you didn't hear about that, we talked about that, I think, in the last call. And so that's going to be something that I think a lot of people will like. I spent quite a bit of time talking about it last week, about the pros and cons of doing something like that. If you don't want that, you can turn it off. There's a hotpatch policy that you actually have to opt into now. That policy is going to flip. And basically, if you want to turn it off, you would go to that policy and you would just say, I don't want hotpatch on this group of devices or these groups of devices. You'll have more control over widgets and feed experience. I'm going to go quicker through some of this stuff. I'm not going to read the whole page, but we've got widgets and feeds experience going to be better. More transparent Windows Insider program. If you've joined the Windows Insider program, it's quite complicated to understand which builds you're going to get. I'm on Canary on one of my devices, and I've got like 29XXX. I don't know the actual number, but I'm on like the 29,000 series, which isn't even close to what anyone else is on right now today. And so if you're on the dev channel, if you're on Canary, if you're on beta, there's release preview. There's just too many different channel definitions, and it's very confusing. So they're looking at making that more simple to understand. And so I'm game for something that's better. Because right now it's even hard to understand like what features you're going to get. Like I'm on Canary, I'd expect to have everything, but I can't get things that people are getting on beta. Like I'm so far ahead that I can't get things that people on lower branches currently have. And so I would expect I'd have the latest and greatest, but I don't. So I think a lot of people that join into Canary get frustrated that they can't use some of the features that are being deployed to lower branches. So we'll see if that improves here moving forward. Now we have improved the feedback hub, and that app is available starting today. So those improvements are in the app right now, or at least they're rolling out. So I don't know if everyone's got it yet, but the new feedback hub app is going out. Should be better. I haven't had a chance to use it, but I'm all for improvements if it makes the not only the data better, but also the response to that data better, because the last thing I want is data going into a black hole. So if this makes the response on that data better, then I'm all for a new app. Then we go through, talk about performance, making apps better, more responsive, improving File Explorer, improving the Windows subsystem for Linux experience, reliability of the OS. There's just a ton of stuff here that I'm not going to read the whole thing, but lots of stuff to take a look at. Okay, Teams optimizations for the Windows app on iOS and Android. If you're using AVD or Windows 365, we now have integrated the Teams optimizations into iOS and Android. That's generally available as of today. So go ahead and install the Windows app on those platforms, update, and you should have those improvements. Moving on to Windows 365 for agents. There's a blog post that was put out about a week ago talking about our agentic productivity story with computer use agents. These innovations were announced back at Ignite. And so this is more of just a reminder, but now we're getting to the point where things are starting to get released. So Agent 365, that's going to be generally available May 1st. And so when that comes out, that's going to help you with any of the agentic workloads that you're working on through things like Copilot Studio. There's a video here that talks or that demonstrates more along the lines of where Agent 365 and Windows 365 for agents kind of tie together. The long and short of this is that if you're developing an app, like using something like Copilot Studio or something like that, if your application or if your AI scenario requires you to use vision to interact with a desktop. So let's say you have like some really complex app, or maybe not even a complex app, you just have an app that you need computer use to look at the actual app and navigate the user interface. That's where Windows 365 for agents is going to come into play. If you're using something like you just had a bunch of files and you had just a folder of content and you wanted to kind of rag over that content, then you could use Copilot Studio to point to that content as your knowledge source. But there's really no need for a quote unquote computer use agent in that scenario. So the video gives a bit of a example of how that would work and how that would tie into Agent 365. Okay, let me get rid of this. Okay, so some more RSAC announcements. This is primarily around Edge. This is the Edge blog. Kind of talks a bit about what I was explaining earlier, but there's also been some new improvements around Purview and AI tooling that you might have, like shadow AI within your environment. So like maybe someone is using Claude or someone's using ChatGPT, and you don't want them to use that. You want them to use Copilot, or you want them to use something else. We can actually leverage Purview. And if the user is using Edge for Business, we will prompt, or the person enters a prompt, and there's a video here that shows. I'm not going to play the video because I don't know how it's going to kind of come out over the stream. But in this video, what you'll see is that they're actually in DeepSeek, and someone is prompting through DeepSeek, but you might not allow DeepSeek. And so within Edge, we can say, nope, you can't use DeepSeek, but through Purview, we'll tell you, hey, your action has been blocked due to your organization's policies, and use Microsoft 365 Copilot to protect your work content. So this would prevent them from uploading any documents into DeepSeek and then trying to iterate over those. We can just basically say, nope, can't do that. Let's go over to M365 Copilot and do that instead, because that's where we're supposed to be doing this. So that, I think it's available now. If not, it's going to be coming soon. But yeah, the prompt level data protections in Purview are generally available. So if that's of interest to you, then take a look at that through Purview. Let's see, this was agent mode. I can't remember what this one was. Hey, wasn't saved. There's some work weird with agent mode. I watched the video. I watched it like 3 days ago, so I can't remember exactly what I was watching. But this was interesting. I just can't remember exactly what it was. There is protecting data and Outlook on the web. Now we have copy protection, screenshot blocking, print restrictions. All of that has now been added to through Purview information protection. That now is enforcing label-based restrictions on Outlook on the web. And so things like copy protection, screenshot blocking, print restrictions, all of those are landing through Edge. There's a video of how that operates as well. And then a lot of partners that are tying into Edge for Business using our security connector framework. So you can see Duo, Ping, RSA. There's a litany of them here. But we're also announcing Clever. They're streamlining logons in education by recognizing trusted devices in Edge for Business. When a device is trusted, students and staff can log in without needing to complete classroom MFA. If you're using Devicey, they're also tying in here as well as Trellix. And that's it. So if any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, you've got the link to the blog post in the chat. Go ahead and take a look at some of those videos. They're all very short, like a minute, maybe 90 seconds. So won't take too much time to watch those. Entra innovations. We got more Entra innovations. I'm going to actually skip over this one just because this post is thick and there's a lot of stuff in it. It also goes through the schedule of what's going to be at RSAC. But if I go ahead and just kind of skim through that, if there's anything interesting there for you. I haven't had a chance to read it. There's just a lot of stuff this week to go over. So I apologize for that. Here is the technical takeoff links. That's the first link in the link dump in the chat. So we got rid of the calendar, I guess the squares. We had all the table. We got rid of that, and now we just have all the different links. One thing that's interesting though is that if you're interested in that Intune timing demystified, the link to that, it actually duplicates the link below it. The migrating from VDI to Windows 365, both of these are the same link. And someone kind of called that out, this commenter. So that's why I included the link in the link dump, because to me, that's probably the most important one. I mean, all of it's important, but a lot of people are really concerned about hey, it takes a while for things to go. Intune's slow. Why is it so slow? Understanding the improvements that we're making here, I think, is probably the biggest thing. All this stuff is good, but if we can make things faster and more reliable and more consistent, to me, that's just a foundational element that I think we all want to see. Windows release health, we had a number of out-of-band fixes that went out, but they went out in different ways. 3 of them came through through hotpatch. And then one was this Microsoft account sign-ins might fail for Microsoft Teams free and other apps. It's kind of funny that we list Teams free first, because there's actually some, I think this says OneDrive, but I think other people are seeing other apps as well. So I don't think this was just related to Teams free. But if you list this, most people might ignore it. But if you put OneDrive here, then you're going to get more people's attention that this is a bigger issue. But this was big enough for us to release an out-of-band patch. And so that came out I think it was March 21st. It's like on a Saturday. So that out of band patch came out. It does impact Windows 11 25H2 and 24H2, but it's for consumers. So if you're using a Microsoft account, so an MSA, not an Entra ID account, but if you're using an MSA, you might run into this issue. Now, I know in some spaces, a lot of people still use MSA accounts as well as Azure Active Directory or Entra IDs. And if that's the case and you're running into this issue, it's now resolved, but you'll need to install the out-of-band patch that went out. So that's available there. There was another issue with Samsung devices and BitLocker. Was it BitLocker? Oh no, this was where the C drive is not accessible. I don't know too many, maybe some of you guys have Samsung Galaxy Book 4 and Samsung desktop models. I don't know anyone that was impacted by this. No one messaged me and said, hey, I'm running into this problem. But if you were running into this was actually, I think this was an issue on the Samsung side of things via the Samsung Galaxy Connect app. So if you are running into this, there's some issues there that have been resolved, but it was an external issue, not anything related to Windows updates. Now, the other hot patch related updates, let's see. So with hot patch, we had 3 different hot patch updates go out. Now, if you're on hot patch, you probably didn't even notice because hot patch just kind of does it behind the scenes with no reboot. So if you are on hot patch, we actually did have three things. First was there's an RAS issue that was found. And so the fix addressed that issue related to these 3 CVEs. That happened on March 13th. So 3 days after Patch Tuesday, that came out. 3 days after that, we had an issue with Bluetooth that was fixed. This was actually something we found internally and noticed that it was an issue. And so effectively what happened is that we found that there was an issue where Bluetooth devices may not appear on the Bluetooth devices page in Windows settings or in quick settings. And even if the devices are connected or function as expected. And so this issue could also prevent issues from prevent users from adding new devices because available devices did not appear in the list for connection. So if you were running into Bluetooth issues after Patch Tuesday, you may not be on hot patch. And if you're not on hot patch, then you won't have this fixed right now. So if you said, hey, like my Bluetooth doesn't work, it's not working the way I expect it to, there is a patch for that. I believe, though, that the out-of-band fix that we released that was related to the Teams issue most likely will include that. I have to look at the version numbers to see if the version number is later than 7984. And if it is, then you should have that fix as well. So you could install that if you're running into any Bluetooth-related problems. And then this is the account sign-in issue that I mentioned earlier. So this was released on the 23rd. So those 3 issues, if you're on hot patch, you probably didn't even notice. They just kind of happened behind the scenes and installed, and those issues were most likely taken care of, and there was no reboot for any of those 3 updates. And then lastly, so we talked about this a while ago, but there was a WDS CVE that came out basically regarding unattend.xml files that are being used with WDS. I don't know how many of you are using standalone WDS that's not tied into Config Manager, but this would affect you if you are using standalone WDS. And so if you are, you're going to want to take a look at this issue, because we're rolling out hardening in 2 different phases. First phase already went through. Second phase is coming next month. And we're effectively disabling hands-free deployment. And hands-free deployment here is leveraging unattend XML files to automate the deployment of the OS through WDS. And only though when it's exposed to the remote install share. And we do call out here that Config Manager is not impacted by this because Config Manager doesn't use this mechanism It basically just uses WDS to deploy out a boot WIM. And the boot WIM doesn't tie into any of the unattended XML stuff that WDS uses natively. But just wanted to make you aware of that. And with that, that's it. So I know there's probably quite a few people in chat doing things.
You did it. I tried to answer as much of the questions as I could.
He is there. He does exist. He's got like a sport coat. Did you raid Scott's closet?
I did. I didn't grab the pocket square this time.
So you flew all the way
Next
to North
time.
Carolina, got the sport coat, and then went to Arizona. That's commitment.
First off, I'm in Tennessee, not Arizona. So
You were posting about Arizona earlier. I figured you were there
Yeah.
sitting in that meeting with them or whatever.
Nope. But yeah. Great job. Thanks for all that. Sorry I was late. But
All
good
right, so
stuff.
you got all the questions done?
I think so, unless there is something that I missed. Feel free to come off mute and ask the questions. I know there was a lot of discussion around the MAA at the beginning, so I know we kind of brushed past some of that, but outside of that, I think we got it all.
Good, because I'm not reading all that.
I know. I figured you wouldn't. I was also making fun of you.
Yeah, there's too much to read.
David said, I think I got my missed. Is there something in the works for approvals notifications? It would be nice for privilege elevation and multi-admin shenanigans. Like, are you talking about like notifications to admins within the console without having to go to the admin tasks pane?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Currently, I mean, like, if I have an end user that does, wants to elevate one, or I guess, multi-admin, someone would have to create a ticket at this point to get my attention, right? So,
Admin's task pane can be very misleading with MAA if the device has multiple records in the back end. We ran into that today. And I'm like, don't use the admin task pane for MAA.
Yeah, I think that one's still in preview. I have not heard if there's anything as far as notifications or approvals for the notifications for approvals, unless you have, Richard.
So
I haven't, but like I said at the beginning of the call, I think with this focus on MAA now, I think a lot of feedback is going to come in about how it could be improved. I guess that's the nice way of me saying it. And so I think this might be one of those things where it's like, you guys are telling us to use this, CISA is telling people to use this as well. So if there's all these people that are saying, use this, okay, great, make it so that I can use it. Because right now there's a number of limitations that make it so I can't realistically use it. Like, it's a good first step, but let's go further. And so I'm hoping that this kind of gets us moving in that direction.
I think the recommendation was just turn a few things on, create just a few policy. Don't turn them all on at once, because you're going to get a lot of, people that are like, what the heck is going on? I used to be able to do this. But, you just work with the teams and you communicate out with them and you just do what you can. And if you got a Teams channel that's dedicated for Configuration Manager or Intune, create a sub channel and say, hey, if you have to really have it like as soon as you do it, shoot the message in there. If not, you just have to, as an Intune administrator or a GA, just check it. And I did today. I don't know what prompted me. I just wanted to see if anybody's using it. And there was a few waiting for approval.
Yeah, I just threw in the chat in the feedback community. If I haven't searched it yet, so there could be a notification item in there, but if there isn't, David, go ahead and create one and then share it here. And we can all upvote it and we'll bring attention to that item to the PG as well.
I think that's what's going to have to take is for us that are in it and knees deep in it and elbows into it is do those, follow the protocol, right?
Yeah. Richard, I see that you pulled up some documentation around PowerShell 7.6. I can't imagine
why would
why would
I
some
do such a
news
thing?
to share around this. Is there
Why would
something specific?
I just want to let everyone know that this went live. So PowerShell 7.6 is now out. If you've been using 7.5 for a while, you can update to 7.6. I've been waiting for PowerShell 7.6 for a while. I thought it was going to be out like at the end of last year.
Yeah, why were you waiting on PowerShell 7.6?
Well, I was working on something.
Pray tell.
Yeah, I was working on something. So, let me kind of pull up something here. So, we open this up. What does this look like? So, PowerShell 7.6 relies on .NET 10, and that had some improvements to how we leverage Fluent in the Windows presentation framework. So what that meant was that I can finally get started on the styling of the FFU Builder UI.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of you, you've probably been looking at this ugly, like arrow-based WPF unstylized user interface for FFU for a while. And you're like, man, why doesn't he just make that thing look better? It looks terrible. And so last week, when PowerShell 7.6 went live, I was finally able to do this. We could have done it in 7.5, but there was a bug where the list views weren't showing the headers. So I could get the content if I searched for search for Chrome or something. I could get the content in here, but I wouldn't have any headers. So it was really annoying. And so I found the issue on GitHub, and I found the dev that was working on it, and he fixed it, but he fixed it in 7.6, like preview 4 or 5 or something. So I was like, okay, well, I don't want to tell people to install preview releases of PowerShell 7.6. I'll just wait until 7.6. Actually, I had to wait for .NET 10 to come out first. So they had to fix it in .NET 10. Once that came out, then I had to wait for PowerShell 7.6 to come out. So I've been basically working on this for like a year, but didn't really have any real way to release it. So once 7.6 came out, I was finally able to get working on it again. And so now we finally have something that looks a little bit more presentable than just some old ugly looking WPF app.
As well as third-party apps are now embracing Windows or .NET 10. And if you're upgrading, there was one that I did, and it was like, yeah, you don't meet the prerequisites. Like, I had to go 8 to 9 to 10. It was like, and then when I got it, it was like, oh man, this looks really cool. So
the nice thing is that you actually don't need to install .NET 10 for this to work. So for FFU Builder, for the new UI, you just need to install PowerShell 7.6, and that'll have what you need for it to work.
What your development needed 10 or something, I think is what you're saying. Or
sorry, what was that?
What you were trying to develop and you were trying to accomplish, you needed to kind of have .NET Framework 10 to do certain things. Yeah.
All I needed was I needed PowerShell 7.6. That's all I needed, because that has everything that you will need to run the app. For the development purposes, I didn't need anything else because there was just a bug that I was running into. So all of this would have worked on .NET or on PowerShell 7.5, which was based on .NET 9. But yeah, so anyway, so now with the FFU Builder, we've got a homepage that actually reaches out to the GitHub repo, and it will tell you if you're on the current build or not. So that was one of the big problems, is that, hey, I release builds generally every month. And so that it's hard to know unless you're checking the repo all the time. So if you star the repo, you'll get the notifications that I've made changes. So if you haven't starred the repo, I would go and do that just so you get those notifications. But You don't necessarily need to do that now because the app will go out and it'll look to see if you're on the current build. We also put in the change log of what's happened. So we take the release, we look at the notes, and we parse that. And so now that'll tell you what was changed. So like the latest release fixes the secure boot issues that we noticed related to BCD boot. So all that stuff's been fixed. I've put some environment checks in here, just a couple right now. I'll probably put some others around like some of the security related issues that we noticed, like from like local policy issues that I know some people might be running into. So we'll put some environment checks and some additional ones in later. But the big one is free disk space. And actually that's partly for me because I run so many FFU builds and download so many drivers that I'll run out of disk space and then won't realize it. And then FFU builder will just break because there's not enough free disk space. And so I'll need to go and clear it out. So this actually is more so for me than anyone else, but it's also helpful for everyone. So put that in there, checking Hyper-V install status, making sure that's good. We also put links into the docs now. So you can, or I'm sorry, links to the discussions and the docs down here through the resources. But the discussions, this is just to basically show people that, hey, there's a discussion section to the GitHub repo. Jump in there and, read what everyone else is posting, ask questions, post. If you're doing something interesting or cool, I've got a bunch of people that are doing like Pixie booting, using iPixie. Like there's all sorts of things that other people are talking about in the repo that you might not be aware of. So this is meant to highlight some of that. And then most of the other stuff, like there's really no functionality changes. It's just more of a visual look and feel. So we've got all basically the same kind of tabs. Something that is functionally changed is this Windows media source, because before we just had the ISO path that you just put the ISO file in. Now I basically make it so that you're more aware that if you don't put an ISO in, then you can download the Windows ESD. If you do put an ISO in, then you're going to use your ISO. We're going to use install Wim from there. So now you've got some controls there. Everything else for the most part should be the same. Windows updates, all that stuff is the same. All this other stuff really should look the same too. I don't think there's any major changes here. Nothing there, nothing there. So just basically more of just a user interface. Build. We now put instead of the checkboxes going across and then checkboxes going vertical, now we've put them all underneath individual expanders. So your general build options now expand out. Same thing for the build USB drive options, those expand out. And then post-build cleanup stuff, all that stuff expands out too. Monitor, I'm going to make some changes to monitor. I'm not quite finished with that yet. The logging kind of shows there's a lot of padding around each individual line. So there's just some like visual stuff that I've got to change. But also dark mode. So now you can use dark mode as well. So it uses your theming as well. So if you change your theme color, sorry, I've got Teams in the way here. So if you change like your theme color here, so if I change this to green, then your button changes to green. So all the accents will change to green. So all that should work fine. Did a lot of testing on it, at least the user interface. All the controls seem to work fine. One thing that I did notice that did break last week or actually this week, the Surface drivers page has changed. And so the parsing that we do for the models didn't work anymore. That change must have happened from like last Thursday or Friday until Monday, maybe. Yeah, I think it was Monday. So I was trying to download Surface drives and I couldn't do it. And I was getting no results found. So I fixed that. The fix is in the UI branch. This has not been posted yet. I'm going to post this to a different branch. It's going to go to the Fluent branch. And so you can get the code from the Fluent branch if you want to play with it. Give me feedback. Let me know if there's anything that's not working, if it's broken. I'm pretty sure things are all going to work fine. But you'll want to be on PowerShell 7.6. You don't want to be on PowerShell 7.5 because if you're on 7.6, I think this is all the headers are going to be broken. So you want to make sure that you're on 7.6. So I'll be posting the instructions for that later on today. I'll put a discussion post on the Fluent branch, and so go ahead and look for that. I'll post a link into our chat here so you guys are aware when all that stuff's up up and available for you guys to download. But yeah, that's it.
It's super awesome, right? You've done an enormous amount of work. I know you sent me the screenshot last week and I was like giddy. So just thanks for your dedication and commitment to improving this and all the patience that you had while waiting. Because I think like this has kind of been your vision since the beginning, right? Like,
Yeah.
So it's neat to see it coming to fruition. So congratulations. Excited for it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Is there any other questions or anything else?
It looks like David got that feedback item up there, so go ahead and upvote that. And we'll share it with the community and the product group as well. So thanks for doing that, David.
Cool.
Thanks,
All
Richard.
right, folks. Well, thanks a lot for sticking around and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.
See you guys. Bye.
Thank you.